flying blind is not the best approach to run your FinOps practice. But of course, if you don't have the governance in place to steer your engineers towards a better place, an optimized place, you're basically dead in the water. You can't really move anymore because your engineers don't have the mindset of being cost aware. So they will not proactively look for optimizations.
Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Taylor Hauk. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that actually drive action. Hello and welcome to another episode of FinOps in Action. I am really excited for this episode because today's guest brings a perspective that we haven't had on the show before. He's an entrepreneur and a FinOps practitioner who's built cloud financial management practices across multiple industries and countries. He started his career in IT infrastructure, spent years as a VMware architect, and then had a moment that changed his trajectory. He watched companies abandon the cloud, not because the technology failed, but because the money didn't work. That sent him down the FinOps path, and he hasn't looked back. Today, he's a FinOps architect at Euroclear, one of the world's largest financial market infrastructure companies. He's also the co-founder of Costra, a FinOps as a service provider, and a founding contributor to the Cloud Efficiency Hub. Welcome to the show, Stijn Depril.
Hey, Taylor, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Stijn. I'm super excited to get into this conversation with you. Just looking back over your experience, you've done FinOps at a lot of different places as internal, practitioner to a consultant to, someone that is working alongside, teams that are developing FinOps practices from the ground up. Take me back to the early days of your FinOps journey, right? I kind of alluded to it in the intro.
It was crazy for me. That was my aha moment on FinOps, to be honest. So I was as you said, a VMware architect for about 20 years or so, and VMware was at that moment in time like the golden thread to my career. Is like, okay, this will last for a long time. However, at one moment in time, I was working for an insurance company through VMware. Because VMware spotted a nice opportunity for them because the customer decided to turn back from the cloud, saying, we can't pay for this. It's impossible to pay for this at the rate that we are going at this point. And the customer decided we will go to Azure at that moment in time, but the story would be AWS or Google, doesn't matter. I think they just agreed they would go to cloud, but they didn't take the financials into account. And for me, that was the moment, the aha moment that I said, okay, this is what's missing in so many cloud journeys. We talk about technology all day long, especially when you're working, for example, for VMware. You are basically an infrastructure company. You're talking about the private cloud and so on, and actually you're talking technology. But in essence, the money part is which really is the oil in the machine, because the oil in the machine is the most important piece. So what I at that moment in time, I reflected and I said, okay, the CFO at that moment in time, he should have like a big red button on his desk saying, oh, no, I'm going to press this now and I'm going to stop this journey now, because this is just not going to happen. And that's for me the moment that I said, okay, this is the missing puzzle piece, and it's until today it is. So it was a good start to be honest.
So take me back to that moment early on in your journey. Do you view it as a financial problem or an engineering problem?
Well, honestly, there I was still in the VMware days. So I was too far from the cloud journey there. But I think it's a bit of both. I think that they moved to the cloud, maybe a bit eyes closed, saying, okay, oh, nice, good story. Let's sign an enterprise agreement with those guys and let's go. We need to move to cloud because everybody in the industry is doing it. And then what I really feel is that at one moment in time you get the engineering part maybe as well. But of course, if you don't have the governance in place to steer your engineers towards a better place, an optimized place, you're basically dead in the water. You can't really move anymore because your engineers don't have the mindset of being cost aware, so they will not proactively look for optimizations. And of course, then all of a sudden your money thing grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden it's getting out of control. And that's, I think, what FinOps brings. It brings a controlled growth, and that's what I've seen in many FinOps practices I've built. Is you don't take away the growth per se, but you gain control as a in a FinOps practice. You don't give it away, I would say. And you basically, in many cases, they give away the keys of the chest with all the gold they give away, which is never a good idea, I think.
So now you've spent many years working, in FinOps across multiple organizations. When you think back on that journey, where does FinOps go right, and where does it go wrong?
In my view, it goes in. I mean, if it goes right, there is the right push in the organization. What I mean is that there is good buy-in from a management point of view, and then it goes right. If there is the right push, I would say the right light, the right spotlight on FinOps, then in my view, you have a better chance of surviving as a FinOps practice. Because yes, you will go to the cloud, and yes, you will be able to do nice stuff and so on. But the problem is if you don't get the support, and I've seen both sides of the coin, I would say, if you don't get the support, also as an external, you've been put on the sideline, and then you see a whole thing working in front of you, saying, okay, I'm on the sideline of like a soccer field, and I know how to score the goal. I know, I see the ball, I see the players running around, but they don't kick the ball in the right direction. They are unable to progress the game, and they are unable to make an assist and score a goal. But you know exactly, if you would be on the field, I kick the ball to the left, to the right, whatever, and I try to make the goal. And that's where I see many things go wrong. If you're being put on the sideline with the knowledge you have, you are unable to make any goals. And that's where I think the buy-in comes in. If you don't have the buy-in from management, you are unable to influence the game, basically, which I think is super important as a practitioner in general, but also me as a consultant coming in. I need to be able to influence the game. If I'm being put on the sideline, I can't influence the game, and that's I think super important. And the places where I saw this going very well is in the places where people put the execs in a room and say, we will now do FinOps, and we will now listen to those guys, and we will not give them a blank check and go, but we will give them some sort of mandate in the organization that they can execute on FinOps. And that's the moment you make so much fun, and where you make so much ground. You can make so much ground in a couple of months' time. But if you don't have the right mandates, you're basically dead, and that's or you don't even come alive, because you basically don't. The inception is never happening. So that's it.
The metaphor of being on the sideline and not being able to impact the game is such a good one. I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think that FinOps should be on the pitch, kicking the ball, scoring the goal, or should we be helping as a manager, as a coach, as a trainer, to enable players on the field, in this case, probably the engineers, to for themselves?
It's a super good question, Taylor. And honestly, I think in some of the conversations, the FinOps needs to be on the pitch in some of the places. Why? Because I mean, it's a bit like if you look at the framework, it's the crawl, walk, run kind of thing, right? And I even add a pre-crawl thing when like the little baby is just lying there all day long. In some cases, you need to show people this is how you do it. This is how you kick the ball into the right direction. And if you show it, they say, "Oh wow, yeah, of course. That's we never thought about to do it in that way." And there is, of course, and that's maybe a side note, there is, of course, not one single way to do things. There is you need to be a bit creative to find the right angle to push things forward. But I mean, then there's maybe a part of your own mindset as a FinOps team. Like you need to explore all the different options to be able to move forward. So yes, you need to be on the field, and that's my personal opinion. FinOps should also be an enabler of things. It should not be the ones doing all the work per se. I don't believe that we need to do all the work. You need to give people the right tools in hand to make their own decisions, whatever the tool. Huh?
It's almost like I'm picturing it as like if you were to look at the stat line at the end of the season, you want to see FinOps with a lot of assists and probably not goals themselves.
Exactly. I don't need to have all the trophies on my back here. No, that's not necessary. I want the organization and the engineers and the architects to do the right job for the organization, and that's, I think, super important in many cases.
This is interesting though, because if you're going to be on the pitch and you're going to be doing these assists, you need to have a perspective that is valuable. You need to be adding value to those engineers, right? And in order to do that, my feeling is you must be technical to a certain degree. Now, your title at Euroclear is FinOps Architect. It's actually not one that I hear so frequently. Can you tell me, like, what does it mean to be a FinOps architect?
Honestly, if look at an architect that constructs a house, he doesn't construct a house per se, but he knows how things should be done, right? He understands that if you put 5 floors on top of each other, that you cannot make the lowest floor made out of carton, because then it would collapse, right? So I think that's a bit how I see my role as an architect, is make sure that we build some sort of machine or machinery, and it could be different machines that work together, that can support the customer to grow on their cloud journey, but make sure that your FinOps practice doesn't fall apart when all of a sudden there is a humongous amount of data coming in, or there is a whole lot of questions on your reporting, or there is optimizations everywhere and you don't know how to act. If you're small, you can influence everything. But if you then build a machine that is too small, you're unable to capture the journey. So for me, it's always, for example, in my current assignment, that it needs to fit the size of your customer. And of course, if you're a super small customer, yes, you can do stuff by hand if you would like to. Am I a fan of that? No, because you need to scale, and whatever the scale will be. But if you're a multi-million kind of consumer, you cannot keep up with the changes. So for just a simple example, for example, the putting stuff off in the evening. There is so many ways to turn stuff off in the evening. You want to keep an Excel list and go over the Excels and turn them off yourself? Fine, that's okay. It's a solution to your problem. Will that scale? No. It won't, because tomorrow your cloud environment looks completely different. So will it scale? No. So should you build something for scale? Yes. Can you do it for 5 VMs? Of course. Will it be worth the effort? Maybe not, but will it scale to 200 VMs? Yes, of course. And so that's, I think, that's for me the having the view on the technicalities, and knowing that these things are potentially happening, and that these things are potentially worthwhile putting the effort in, I would say. So that's for me the architecting piece, making sure that there's a house built and not a carton box or some sort. So, yeah.
When you think about building this house, what do you think are the key pillars? Like, how do you build a strong foundation in a FinOps practice?
It's an interesting one. I've been thinking about it, been reading on it. It depends a bit from customer to customer, I must say, because in some customers, they see FinOps as an investment track, saying we want to make sure that we keep control on our expense, on cloud expense. I saw other customers where they say we need to optimize now. Okay, then your talk track is completely different, because I mean, in the first one, you can look at the budgets, you can look at your forecast, what's going, what's staying, and so on. We could look at that, and then you start building control. You can turn on anomaly alerts on. You work a bit on the optimizations and so on. So there you build control on what's there. Of course, if your customer comes in and says, "Hey, I want to have optimizations now," you need to prioritize a couple of things. You need to see what you're doing. So you need to have reporting to start with, because otherwise you won't see any optimizations coming in. Once you have the optimizations, you also need to have a track to execute on those optimizations, because if you don't put it in action, I mean, it's all nice on paper and a whiteboard, but if you're unable to put it in action, then yeah, you will never be able to optimize stuff. But on the other hand, you also need to, for example, at that moment in time, put the rate optimization strategy first. So it's a bit of it depends a bit on how your customer and how the organization wants to work, and how they want to approach FinOps. It depends a bit on the question and how to fulfill that. But the framework has all the answers. I mean, it at least has a box where you can start with. So it's a bit of I always fall back on the framework saying, hey, your question fits in this box. You want to keep control on your architects? Cool. Architecting for cloud, it's there. Let's have a conversation with the architects. You want to have the workload optimization? Let's have a conversation with your engineers. How are we going to put these in action? And I mean, we can put everything into the framework if we would like to. So I think that's something super important for me to be able to link back to something, because that's your common language at one point.
I want to kind of double click on the optimization. When you come in and someone tells you, hey, I want to optimize, that's my goal. I need my costs to go down. I'm either in an unsustainable situation, or I just want to be spending less. By the way, this was my experience in the beginning of my FinOps journey. My company came and they said, we must reduce our cloud costs. It is imperative. It is a company-wide goal. Steps that you if that was your situation.
Point one, I think I would always ask the team and the company that is asking me that question, is this your only goal? Because FinOps is more than only optimizing your workloads, right? So it's also ingesting a bit of a culture into your company. It's also making sure there is the right process and policies in place to make that happen. Of course, if you answer that, they will say, yes, Stan, but that's not the right answer. I want optimizations now. So you always need to find different speeds and to the answer, I would say, or to the goal. So what I most of the time would do is I would or sit together with one of the teams, or I would go into the cloud itself and start looking for like the base optimizations they could already do. Because if you can start showing that to management and to people in the organization, saying, hey, I found this, and we will now start working on that. I mean, that's all helping on the optimization journey, I would say. And then we can start talking about hey, I found this workload optimization. Let's say there is a couple of unattached disks and whatever. It doesn't matter on the amount. That's where the architect picks over or takes over. Is yes, you can delete them manually, but what if we would put a policy in place which then automates that for you? So you don't need to really look at it. We just knock a policy. We say, okay, 30 days not used. Let's move it to a snapshot and then delete the data. Could be the policy. There is many ways to do that. So I think it's always I want to say yes to my customer, but not always directly yes, if that makes sense. It's I always want to make sure the frame is clear for them. And in many cases, I heard one of the IT finance one day. She came to me and she said, "Okay, Stan, you need to save me 500K next year." I said, "Okay, cool. So is it on top of what we did this year?" And she said, "No. This year is done, right? It's like accountancy. They just say at the end of the fiscal year we stop counting the numbers anymore." I said, "Yeah, but that's not correct. I mean, you need to think about what we saved you this year." No, that doesn't count anymore. I said, "Okay, let's reverse the question. Let's boomerang the question. If we would not optimize this, if we would not turn all that stuff off, would it still be a cost for you?" And then at that moment in time, I saw the finance lady, like, she started to laugh with me because she was like, "Ah, damn, he got me in a very cornered position here because I can't move." Yes, it would still be a cost. So it would always be a saving, right? Ah, yeah, then it would also always be a saving. So that's also the optimization part. If you get the question, I mean, I'm not afraid of challenging whoever. It doesn't matter if it's a CFO or it's an IT finance or it's whoever. I think you need to challenge everybody because nobody really is 100% doesn't have all the knowledge, I would say. So I can learn every day from my customers. I can learn every day from the people I work with. So I think that's part of your journey as well.
I've got a question on this theme of challenging people and bringing up perhaps tough conversations. On the topic of workload optimization in 2026, a lot of the low hanging fruit is kind of taken care of, or at least people are aware of it. Say the cloud native recommendations that come out, you have underutilized VMs, you have your untouched disks, but very well there are many other cloud services that exist with all these little configurations that could be correctly placed or incorrectly placed. But when you're looking to optimize and you're working with engineers that have designed an application over time, and you come with an insight or a recommendation to make a change, they don't always uh, jump at that opportunity to change their architecture or configuration. How do you work with them through this?
I mean, I want to reverse it. As you say, yes, they don't really want to, not really, but they might be hesitant to work with you, if you call it like that. However, I have a strong belief that an engineer really wants to do good for his organization, right? And I truly believe that. And in every conversation I go in, whatever people say around me about the person I will have a meeting with, I always assume there is some sort of positive intent where I can connect with, right? So I really believe an engineer wants to do best for his company. But of course, you need to show a bit on what the potential might be on making this optimization. And yes, you need to challenge people, I think. You need to challenge people, and you need to challenge that engineer saying, okay, you build a fantastic application, but let's dive into this. Tell me about this. How do you where do you think there is low hanging fruit? Because in many cases, they don't think about the low hanging fruit that you just said. They think about, but we do something inside our application, and that deserves a bit of attention. So I will put that on my backlog and I will do that next week, which might save you, I don't know, it might save you 200 euros, but it might save you 2000 as well, or whatever at the end of the month. And that's, I think, where you can't be arrogant as a FinOps practitioner coming in and say, I know everything. Impossible. You don't. And that's a bit of an you just come in and you have a conversation with the people and you try to convince them on how they could potentially optimize the application. And I'm sure somebody that did the application, built the application, took care of it for 10 years, they really know inside out where the sharp edges are, but they might not have time for it. And that's also where the mandate again comes in and say, if you, for example, talk to that the engineer's manager, say, okay, I need to have a conversation with that guy. Can we have some time on his backlog next month? For sure. Yeah, sure. Let's go, because that manager will get the heat if that application keeps spending too much money. So at one moment in time, the one end connects to the other end, and then you need to you just need to grab the momentum, I would say.
How you started that answer is perfect. Engineers, they mean so well and they want improvements and operational improvements. And I think that as this is important, I think, for the listeners to understand, especially those earlier in FinOps, if you come in and you view engineering as opposed to your goals or as to be in conflict with FinOps best practices or initiatives, it's not going to work for you. This is a partnership.
But they have so much power, Taylor. They have so much power. If they don't want to click certain buttons, they don't click it. Or if they don't want to execute certain code, they don't execute it. So you're also attached to them. So you need to connect with the people. Otherwise, you will be unable to get to a goal.
And show up with the data and the context that's needed. If you have a recommendation, you need to show up with all of the data that supports that. Take that legwork off of their plate, because as an engineer, you've got more than enough things to do. Engineering bandwidth is the most scarce resource you're working with as a FinOps practitioner. And so if you're going to demand their time, if you're going to book a meeting, if you're going to ask them to spend time on a sprint, on an initiative, you better be showing up, having done the work with a specific ask, with all the data to support it, and ready to hear their perspective and adjust accordingly.
I mean, of course, if you're in FinOps, I mean, you will always think about how do I get my data right? Because without the data, I mean, I have like a saying, and I think it's being used everywhere, but you cannot control what you cannot see, right? So if you are unable to connect it to some piece of data, you're flying blind. And as a FinOps practitioner, flying blind is not the best approach to run your FinOps practice. So if you show up and you could at least put a hypothesis on the table saying, hey, dear engineer, I saw this. And I think this is the reason why certain things are what they are. Would you agree or not? And then you step back and you let them answer, because there might be 500 reasons why this is the right way to configure it. And then you just need to, I'm not saying you need to let it go, but you can question them a bit more. But at one moment in time, you will need to step back because they own the application. On the other hand, of course, an engineer, as you said, the time is so scarce. So if they don't want to work with you, they will throw 500,000 arguments towards you and they will not work with you. So there is, of course, also some sort of gray zone in between the answer and the reality. So you need to understand in which shade of gray you are at that moment in time. And I think that's also super important to understand that.
It's so true. And Stan, at this point, I want to get a little bit tactical with you. I mean, when you think through your experience working with engineers and facing these challenges and coming up with these proposals, can you think to any time that was a big win for you? You know, from end to end, from the hypothesis through to the execution. Like, what did it look like?
I think one of the, it's the thing where I'm very proud of, I did it with a team in Portugal, was I organized some sort of hackathon, a FinOps hackathon, which maybe not 100% links to your answer or answers your question, I would say. But what I really like at that moment in time is again, the architecting thought about it is I don't need to fish for them. They need to learn to fish for themselves, right? So at one moment in time, we had a hard time getting through to the engineers and also the architects and so on. So we asked again the mandate. We asked during one of the steercos, a FinOps steerco, which I think should be mandatory in every FinOps practice, to ask for mandate, to ask for, okay, can you decide on this? Really, I need it now. And I asked, okay, guys, we have a hard time getting through. But I have a proposal. I thought about this. The proposal is, let's organize a FinOps hackathon, and we will learn the people how to fish, basically. And we had a long list of optimizations that we could tick off. We put a lot of effort. Not only myself. I don't want to take all the credits for that. But there was a team that put quite a lot of effort in that to also talk to the different people, because they got the mandate. They could talk to the people. The door was open at one point. We would do that at that moment in time. And so we had a lot of agreed savings, right? So we just needed the time, a window to execute on those savings. What we did that day was not only execute on the savings, we basically build a bridge between teams. And that for me was the best outcome of that day. We basically built a bridge where we could walk in bi-directional way. It was no longer one directional conversation. No. They came to us saying, "Hey guys, we found something here. Do you see this as well?" And so on and so on. So we finally got a conversation going. And at one moment in time, a couple of months later, I was able to report into the steerco saying, "Okay, guys, we were able to cut down your ingestion of data in your data platform by X." But before I would report that on my slides, I asked a couple of questions during my steerco, and I said, "Okay, guys, I have a question on this. I would like to talk to you about the data platform, but I first have a couple of questions about how you consumed the data platform the last month. One question: how was your experience last month on the data platform? Was it good?" And everybody, yeah, it was okay. It was okay. Yes, okay. So did you miss any features? No, Stan, there were new features being launched and blah, 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 blah. So your service is getting better, right? Yes, our service was better last month than this month. Okay, we cut 60K out of your ingestion process. for your data platform and you didn't even notice. Right. And that was a moment where the optimization came from the engineers. I didn't think about it. But it was the engineers, it was the people that worked every day on the data platform that said, we can do this in a better, more smart way. So we can cut out costs because we do, I don't know, X, Y, Z different. Cool, let's do it. And they did it. And it was all of a sudden we saw a drop in the data platform pipelines. We saw a drop. I said, okay, cool. They did something. We reached out over our bridge that we built during the hackathon. And they said, oh yeah, we changed stuff. Okay, nice. Thank you very much. And we were able to report it. So then we accomplished another thing. We said to the steerco, hey guys, your data team, they're genius because they cut out cost. They are now cost aware. They think with cost in mind. And we were also heroes because we were able to report that nothing fell over, but stuff was still running, and it was running more optimized. They got more value out of their cloud basically. So that was a fantastic moment to be able to report that.
I mean, this really goes full circle back to the earlier conversation about FinOps being on the field, on the pitch, getting these assists. And that's where it's like all the time that you spent in training and in practice and working with these teams and building the relationships, that comes to fruition during the season, so to speak, on the pitch. And now you're getting the wins and they're coming to you with ideas and they're scoring goals on their own.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also, I think, where as an architect, you succeed your mission if you feel that is happening. Your mission is succeeded because that's the moment you won a team. You've built a team, and that team now thinks for you because you don't need to think about it. They know the ins and the outs of that data platform. I don't know it, but they were able to report back on hey guys, we did a thing and we were successful by cutting the cost, which is I think the best outcome they could get.
Say that's so interesting. And now just shifting gears one last time before we close things out, I want to kind of put you on the spot and think about a topic that everyone's talking about these days. And that's AI. How's it going to change the way that we work?
It's an interesting topic I've been thinking about for the last couple of months, and I must say I saw and you definitely saw it as well. The survey of the foundation. AI is coming on top of everything else. Honestly, I also see this in reality. I see people jumping blindly on tokens, where you really need to say to the guys, "Hey guys, okay, I get it. You want to fulfill a business case or a use case or whatever with AI, but think about certain things. You need to create something that is solid, right? Don't jump into the AI bubble directly, but think about it before you jump." I wrote a blog about it where I compared the AI modeling to I use this bit of a metaphor, like at the beginning, at the entrance, you have like a client, and that client is standing in front of a restaurant where there are no windows, but he's very hungry. So he's very hungry. He wants to eat. So you say, I'm going in, and at the other end, he comes out. No more hungry. Yeah, so he's like, okay, I'm good, I'm fed. But I don't know if he's being fed by a McDo burger of $1 or $2 or whatever it costs, or he had caviar by the kilo. I don't know. So it's a bit of a problem if you don't know, for example, which models you're going to use in AI. So that's one thing, I think. So you need to be able to steer that, right? I think that is super important on the optimization side of how can we as FinOps practice do something for AI. On the other hand, AI can do stuff for us as well, right? I think that's reversing basically the coin. I'm not a super fan of big FinOps teams. So there is a couple of ways to do things is, or you optimize and you automate your own existence as a FinOps team, where I'm not saying that we make ourselves worthless in a company, but you can leave the basic tasks to AI. For example, if you get an anomaly, cool, you get an anomaly. Do I need to look at it, or can I train a model that looks at this anomaly, that makes an interpretation and makes it, connects it to a ticket or whatever it may be, whatever the flow is in the company. Something that we did also in one of our customers. But we can also work, for example, on budgeting. Hey, we see a trend coming in. We can make AI analyze that trend. Why is that? And so on and so on. So you can also make an analysis, I would say, based on an agent somewhere. I mean, we can, I mean, I think we only see the tip of the iceberg of what's possible at this point. I think there will be more things possible, but of course, all that interpretation comes also with a cost again. So we need to also find a good balance that we don't AI everything, but we find the right value for what our problem is, and then maybe put AI on top of that. And I think AI will help us gigantically with putting things together. I mean, why should we, for example, make all our business cases ourselves, for example? Why should we could easily make a business case by saying this is the input, go search for all the prices and put it in that format, for example, because the planning and estimating part, I mean, it's at this point quite a lot of manual work, because you can talk to a pricing API, you can put the discounts in there, you can say I want 1 year and 3 year variance, whatever, just make it happen. And if you train a model, the model will give you normally an output. Would say always verify, but then you are already there. I mean, you have already something, a FinOps assessment. Why shouldn't you automate that through AI, for example? I mean, all of these things you can think about every single capability. I think you can put AI on top of that if you want, but it's not because it's possible you should do it. That's another conversation. I think that's.
I think that AI is going to have a massive impact on almost everything that we do. It's also a huge tailwind for us because the cost of computer is only going to become a more important business metric. But as you noted, AI won't be able to do everything. One of the things it won't be able to do is cycle 650 kilometers around the lake.
I didn't see an AI doing that. That's for sure. Yeah, that's one of my off FinOps moments. I would say is I'm based out of Belgium, and in Belgium there is quite a big cycling culture, I would say. And so we have plenty of cycling races and so on. Everybody knows the Tour de France, but the classics in the beginning of the season are super spectacular and so on. They just started, so if you want to watch them, feel free this weekend. There is Strade Bianche, but we might be need to watch it in the rewind, I think, because the podcast won't be published before that. So I do that, but it's also being on the bike, being in nature, being just doing stuff, right? And 650 kilometers is quite a big ride. Huh? So I'm a big fan of Sweden, the Nordics, and there are, if you look a bit at the geography of Sweden, there are 2 big lakes, and one of the lakes has one of the most popular gravel paths around it. So that's something I did bikepacked last year. So I bikepacked my way around the lake. You can wild camp in Sweden, so you just go into the forest, put your tent up, and you go. And this year, I don't know if I told you that, but this year I will do 350. So there are 2 lakes. The other one surrounding is the 315. So I will cycle that this year, but I will do it in 24 hours. So that's the other challenge I'm taking this year.
That's super impressive. If you were giving someone advice who is getting into like this sport, the first trip, where would you go? If I was like, hey, I want to go cycle in Europe, where would you send me?
Honestly, there is so many countries that are beautiful. I mean, but if you're cycling, so I did running and cycling, and running goes too slow for me. I mean, I don't. The environment doesn't change a lot. It's if you're running in a forest, chances are if you run 5 kilometers, you're still running in a forest. if you for example, I have the habit of, for example, when I'm in lunch, I take my bike and I go cycling for 1 hour, and I can go in every wind direction I can go, and I still find new places, which I can't say you need to go to the Netherlands or to France or to whatever. But if you're starting, most probably I won't recommend going to the mountains, because then you're going to do one ride and you will say, "Poof, never again." So you just need to start with what you can absorb, I would say, and then you just go. And it's so nice if you travel by bike, you see so much more. Whatever the environment, if you do 650 kilometers, I saw hills, I saw forest, I saw green, yellow fields with all little flowers on it. I saw sweat, blood, and tears, but that's also good, right? It's just you just challenge yourself. So I like to be challenged. I like to challenge myself. I like challenging organizations in doing FinOps. I get my best ideas when I'm on my bike, which is also good. If I have a very hard case, I'll jump on my bike and I go, and then I'll hopefully have an answer when I get back home. Depends on the amount of kilometers I do. So,
Man, what an amazing way to close it, Stan. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
no worries, Taylor. Whatever you want me, I'm available for you. Thank you very much for having me.
Where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me. I think the best place to find me is, I think, on LinkedIn. If you just type my name, there are not that many Stijn Deprils that are inside of FinOps. So you can just type my name and connect. And happy to exchange DMs and so on. I'm happy to help build a community. Or you can find me on the Cloud Efficiency Hub as well, but you won't be able to connect there. But this is also a fantastic place to be. I think as a FinOps practitioner, you should be there at least.
Awesome, Stan. This has been a fantastic episode. Thank you once again for joining, and thank you to our audience. I hope you got something out of today's conversation. If you did, please share it with someone that needs to hear it. This has been another amazing episode of FinOps in Action, and we'll see you next time.
That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that actually drive action.